Somewhere on the frontier between thought and reality exists the Discworld, a parallel time and place which might sound and smell very much like our own, but looks completely different. Particularly as it's carried through space on the back of a giant turtle, on which is standing 4 elephants, which is carrying the world. Literally, that's what this is. And I'll quote this. The turtle was crawling from the birthplace to the time of mating, as were all the stars in the sky, which were obviously also carried by giant turtles. When they arrived, they would briefly and passionately mate, for the first and only time, and from that fiery union, new turtles would be born to carry a new pattern of worlds. This was known as the Big Bang hypothesis. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first Terry Pratchett book, The Colour of Magic. Hello everyone, my name is Reese and welcome to my first ever Terry Pratchett review. This was a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's my first ever experience reading Terry Pratchett and I was really looking forward to it. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I knew it was absurdism and crazy and imaginative. I never realised it was going to be quite as crazy and imaginative as it actually was. Now, so many people and so many different guides out there don't advise starting at the beginning, but if I'm honest, I'm a bit of a weirdo and I'm a bit of a completionist and I love doing things from the start, especially in publication order, just because then I get to see how someone develops as a writer and I get to see these different ideas coming in at the same time, and I kind of like to share that feeling of what if someone was reading this in order. So I decided to go from the beginning. I think I might stick with the release order for now. I might chop and change a little bit further on. But I think where a lot of people have said this was actually one of the weaker Terry Pratchett books, that just makes me very excited for the rest of them because I really enjoyed this. It wasn't perfect. No, it wasn't 100% perfect. But if this is Terry Pratchett's bad, I can't wait for his good. It's going to be brilliant. This was such a fun palate cleanser. I'm reading this in between 2 other quite big, epic, chunky fantasies. So this was a great palate cleanser to just blast through in a day or two. I mean, if you sat down, you could probably sit and read this in one reading if you really wanted to. And it's so different. There's so little to compare this to. It's just very Pratchett. And I haven't even read any more Pratchett, but the closest thing I can think of that it reminded me of would be something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that just for the satire and the ridiculousness and that sort of tongue-in-cheek comedy. That's the closest I can think of. The other thing that it didn't necessarily read like this, but it made me feel a bit like when I was younger and I was reading sort of Roald Dahl books. It had that sort of crazy kind of, you're never really quite sure what's going to happen, and that imaginative feel to them. And I think that's what really connected with me in this book. Although it wasn't perfect, there were some clunky moments where I was a bit like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on, and some of the characters weren't particularly fleshed out. I didn't really care. It kind of set me up going, this is going to be a ridiculous tale. There's some wacky, goofy characters coming in. We're going along for a ride with Rincewind, with 2 flowers, and the luggage. So just come along and see if you can join me in my weird world. There were so many different things thrown at you left and right, and while some of them didn't land, there were so many of them, it didn't matter. If you didn't like one thing, or one thing wasn't particularly funny to you, 2 lines later there's going to be something funny for you, so it was absolutely fine. Yeah, it was just wild. And yeah, the thing I think it made me feel most, it was so magical and so whimsical that it felt like you were reading a book that I would have read when I was a kid, but it didn't feel like a kid's book. It was complex enough that I had to sit there and work out what was going on. I couldn't just sit back and be like, yeah, I've got this. This is fine. I don't have to think. You did have to think while reading it to work out what was happening, what's going on. And I won't lie to you, I can't remember what the word is, but where it starts talking about insurance, I didn't get it. Took me a minute to get the joke. I won't lie, it took me a moment to get all those little sort of wordplay jokes, but then the penny drops, and it's hilarious and it's funny, and I found myself genuinely chuckling at this, which was great. The characters were fun and good to get to know them. Rincewind is just this sort of cantankerous, useless wizard that everyone seems to think is brilliant, and the way that sort of comes around, especially towards the end of the book, is again so funny. You get to see him just, he doesn't want this at all. Like, he's the ultimate reluctant hero, but like almost fourth wall breaking. The fact that he's just sitting there going, I don't want this, please just leave me be, I want to go home and do what I want to do, stop making me do this. And yet he's dragged along into all of them. And then Two Flowers, the tourist, he's just, if he's not the most like relatable character, even in this completely absurd world, I don't know what is. Like, even if you don't want to admit it to yourself, he is every single one of us. He is us going on holiday thinking we know what we're talking about, or just wanting to experience this, and just being like a little lost puppy, throwing money around, not knowing what's happening, not realising the danger you could be in at times. And you just sort of fall in love with these characters, even without realising it. I mean, even the luggage itself, it's a character in itself. He's like this presence that just comes along and is just appearing throughout the book, and it's just so whimsical, so fun, and so ridiculous. It was just such a joy to read, especially after reading some heavier fantasy. It was so nice to just dip into this little world, and I really do want to get more into other things. I've heard some of the other ones delve into more sort of almost more serious topics, but still with this satirical edge to them. So I think that'd be really interesting to get into. But this was just a wonderful, fun romp. No, it's not perfect. There were bits that didn't quite work, and some of the sort of framing device bits that happened in each section was sometimes a bit jarring, and it took a moment to work out what was going on, to the detriment of the story at times, because it was like, oh, well, hang on, I need to go back and read that because I now understand what that's going. So not to the, oh, this is clever moment, but to the, oh, okay, hang on, I know where I am moments. And yeah, it was ridiculous, but it was great fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I definitely want to read more of these. So I'm very pleased I did. I'm going to give it a 3.75, because whilst it was really fun, and I can certainly see, if this is your first book, I can certainly see more coming out of it, and it being so brilliant, and I want to know more about this world, this crazy, ridiculous world. It was very much a beginning, so yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more, but 3.75, The Colour of Magic, if you haven't read it, give it a read, and just enjoy it. It's so much fun, and I will see you in the next one. See ya!